You mean to tell me Grand Chronologist VC Torion's crystalline tentacles flickered with barely contained frustration that the humans are still not properly integrated into the temporal compliance network? Assistant Administrator Pix Lara bobbed nervously in the anti-gravity field, her bioluminescent patches pulsing an anxious shade of green. Well, sir, you see? It's complicated. Complicated VC Torion's voice modulator crackled with derision. We are the Chronos Consortium. We have synchronized the temporal patterns of 47 species across 12 galaxies. What could possibly be so complicated about one primitive species from a backwater spiral arm? The massive display screen behind them showed Earth's temporal variance patterns, a chaotic mess of spikes and dips that made absolutely no mathematical sense. It was, quite frankly, an insult to the perfectly ordered universe the consortium had worked so hard to create. Perhaps, Pix Lara ventured carefully, I should start from the beginning of our observation period. Oh, by all means, VC Torion's tentacles waved sarcastically. Enlighten me on how one of our most experienced temporal adjustment teams managed to utterly fail at their primary directive. Pix Lara pulled up the initial survey data, trying not to notice how her superior's chromatophores were shifting to an alarming shade of ultraviolet. We began with our standard approach analyzing their cultural relationship with time. And, well, that's where things started getting interesting. Interesting, VC Torion's translator nearly squeaked on the word. Do enlighten me on your definition of interesting. You see, sir, humans have this concept called fashionably late. It's when they deliberately arrive after an appointed time because they believe it makes them appear more important or sophisticated. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the soft hum of the temporal matrices that powered their civilization. They, intentionally, desynchronized themselves. VC Torion's voice had gone dangerously quiet. Oh, that's just the beginning. Pix Lara brought up another data set, this one showing human workplace patterns. They have these things called meetings that are scheduled to start at specific times, but there's an unwritten rule that everyone should arrive at least 5 minutes late, except for the person who organized it, who should arrive exactly on time to be quietly annoyed at everyone else. But that's temporal anarchy. VC Torion's tentacles were now coiling and uncoiling rapidly, a sure sign of extreme distress. And then there's something called Hawaiian time. Pix Lara continued, now somewhat enjoying her superior's mounting horror. It's an entire cultural concept based on the idea that time is more of a suggestion. A suggestion. VC Torion's voice had risen several octaves. Indeed, our field agents observed numerous instances where humans would say, let's meet at 2, and then show up anywhere between 2:15 and 3, with neither party showing any signs of distress or temporal dysfunction. VC Torion drifted to his viewing portal, gazing out at the perfectly synchronized chronometric engines that powered their vast civilization. Surely, he said quietly, surely you attempted the standard temporal alignment procedures. Oh, we did. Pix Lara brought up yet another screen, this one showing a catastrophically failed attempt at implementing a standardized time system. We introduced atomic clocks, synchronized digital time displays, and even attempted to implement a unified global time zone. And they created something called daylight saving time in response. The noise VC Torion made was unlike anything Pix Lara had heard in her 300 cycles of existence. It was somewhere between a squeak and a temporal harmonic disruption. They deliberately shift their entire time measurement system backward and forward by an arbitrary amount, twice a year. Yes, sir, and different regions do it on different dates. Some don't do it at all. Some did it and then stopped. Some stopped and then started again. VC Torion's tentacles had gone completely still, a bad sign. Show me the psychological impact studies. Surely this causes massive mental distress. Well, Pix Lara pulled up another data set. They do complain about it. Quite a lot, actually. But they keep doing it anyway. They've turned it into something called memes. Would you like to see some examples? No, VC Torion's chromatophores had shifted to an alarming shade of infrared. What I want to know is how this affects our grand plan for universal temporal synchronization. Ah, Pix Lara's bioluminescence dimmed noticeably. That's the real problem, sir. You see, we've discovered that humans don't just resist temporal standardization, they appear to be completely immune to it. Our most sophisticated chronometric adjustment fields simply bounce off them. Impossible. Nothing can resist a level 7 temporal standardization field. Humans can. In fact, they seem to become even more temporally chaotic when we try to impose order. We had one test group that started showing up early to things just despite our adjustment attempts. Early. Can you imagine? VC Torian drifted to his command console, his tentacles moving rapidly over the controls. There must be something we're missing. Some fundamental principle of temporal physics we haven't considered. Actually, sir, Pix Lara brought up one final display. Our latest theory is that humans have developed some sort of natural defense against temporal manipulation. We believe it's connected to something they call procrastination, a seemingly innate ability to distort time through sheer force of will and last-minute panic. VC Torian was now floating upside down in his anti-gravity field, a clear sign of extreme cognitive distress among his species. Tell me about this. Procrastination, he spat the word out like it was a temporal anomaly. Pix Lara brought up a holographic simulation of human behavior patterns. It appears to be some sort of self-induced time dilation effect. Humans can compress what should be 3 hours of work into 15 minutes through sheer panic and deadline pressure. That's physically impossible. Oh, it gets better. Pix Lara's bioluminescent patches flickered with what could only be described as scientific amusement. They have this saying, due tomorrow. Due tomorrow, our temporal physicists are still trying to understand how they haven't collapsed their local space-time continuum. The hologram showed a human college student, labeled subject Kevin Martinez, starting a 10-page research paper exactly 47 minutes before its deadline. Somehow, through what the consortium scientists could only describe as temporal sorcery, he finished it with 2 minutes to spare. But the energy requirements for such temporal compression, VC Torian's tentacles were tying themselves into knots, are apparently fueled by something called energy drinks and pure spite. Pix Lara completed. We've recorded instances of humans achieving temporal compression ratios that violate at least 3 fundamental laws of physics. She brought up another case study subject, Emily Chen, professional procrastinator, a human who had somehow managed to pack for a 3-week vacation in under 10 minutes while simultaneously attending a virtual work meeting and booking a taxi. The most disturbing part, Pix Lara continued, her color shifting to a contemplative purple, is that they seem to be teaching this ability to their offspring. Watch this classroom footage. The hologram showed a human education center. A small human was presenting a project, clearly constructed moments before, held together with something called duct tape and sheer determination. Teacher, when did you start this project? Child, about 10 minutes ago. Teacher sighs, the project was assigned 3 weeks ago. Child, yeah, but I work better under pressure. VC Torian's chromatophores had gone completely dark, a sign of deep existential crisis. But our previous subject species, the Rigelians, the Centaurians, even the notoriously chaotic Betelgeusians, they all submitted to temporal standardization within one local solar cycle. Yes, well, Pix Lara pulled up another dataset. Those species operated on logical principles. Humans appear to run on something they call vibes. Vibes. VC Torian's translator struggled with the concept. It's difficult to explain. They'll ignore perfectly functional temporal measurement devices in favor of feeling like it's time to do something. Watch this security footage from one of our observation posts. The hologram showed a human office worker, subject James Thompson, looking at a clock that clearly showed 4:57 p.m. Time to head out, Thompson announced, packing up his belongings. But his designated end of work period was 5 p.m. VC Torian's tentacles gesticulated wildly. Exactly. When our field agent questioned him, he simply said close enough and left anyway. The temporal variance ripples affected our monitoring equipment for hours. This is unprecedented. VC Torian drifted to his command console, accessing the consortium's historical records. In all our cycles of temporal standardization, we've never encountered a species so temporally anarchic. Pix Lara suggested. And the worst part is, they're spreading this temporal chaos. Look at this data from our colonial outposts near Earth. The main screen displayed a horrifying trend. Alien species that had previously been perfectly synchronized were beginning to exhibit human-like temporal behaviors. There were reports of Rigelian younglings claiming they were running on human time when they missed their educational synchronization periods. They've even corrupted the chronox of Alpha Centauri. VC Torian moaned. Their high temporal priest showed up late to the grand synchronization ceremony, claiming he was being fashionably late like his human friends. Pix Lara's bioluminescence pulsed sympathetically. There's more, sir. We've detected something even more disturbing. Something they call snooze buttons. The noise VC Torion made caused several temporal measuring devices to malfunction. No, you don't mean. Yes, sir. They've created devices specifically designed to fragment their sleep cycles into 9-minute increments of temporal chaos. They'll set an alarm for a specific time, then deliberately ignore it multiple times, creating microtemporal distortions that ripple through the fabric of space-time. But why? Why? They call it 5 more minutes. Our analysts have discovered that these 5 minutes can actually last anywhere from 2 to 45 standard minutes, completely destroying any attempt at temporal standardization. VC Torion drifted to his viewing portal again, his tentacles drooping in defeat. Show me the worst of it. Show me what happened when we tried to implement the temporal compliance network on their primary business centers. Pix Lara hesitated. Sir, are you sure? The footage is disturbing. I need to understand what we're dealing with. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human business district. The consortium's temporal standardization field was clearly visible as a subtle blue shimmer in the air. And then, they're all still late to work, VC Torion whispered in horror, even with our most powerful synchronization field. Yes, sir. They simply created something called traffic, a seemingly spontaneous gathering of vehicles moving at inconsistent speeds for no apparent reason. When we removed the vehicles, they invented construction delays when we cleared those. They started stopping for something called coffee runs. Sir Pix Lara's bioluminescence had shifted to emergency ultraviolet frequencies. There's something else you need to see. Something that might explain why our temporal control efforts have been so ineffective. VC Torion had finally righted himself in the anti-gravity field, though his tentacles were still showing signs of acute stress coiling. Worse than the snooze buttons. We've discovered their secret weapon, sir. Something they call time management seminars. The main screen displayed footage from one such event. A human stood before a group of other humans, gesturing at charts and diagrams with something called a laser pointer that the humans seemed physically incapable of not playing with. Now, the key to effective time management, the presenter announced, is to break your day into 15-minute increments and schedule everything precisely. VC Torion's chromatophores brightened momentarily. Finally, a sign of temporal rationality. Wait for it, Pix, Lara said grimly. On screen, an audience member raised their hand. What if something takes longer than expected? Oh, that's normal, the presenter cheerfully replied. Just bump everything else back. Flexibility is key. Flexibility, VC Torion's voice modulator crackled with distress. Time isn't flexible. Sir Pix Lara brought up another data set. I regret to inform you that humans have somehow weaponized temporal flexibility. Watch what happened when we attempted to impose rigid scheduling on their workplace environments. The footage showed an office where the consortium had installed their most advanced temporal regulation field. Everything was running with perfect precision, for approximately 3.7 minutes. Then someone announced, "Hey, anyone want to grab lunch?" The carefully constructed temporal order dissolved into chaos as humans began a complex social negotiation that seemed to defy all known laws of causality. I could eat. Is it lunchtime already? It's basically noon. It's 10:45. Yeah, but I skipped breakfast, early lunch. Sure, why not let me just finish this one thing 3 hours later? VC Torion's tentacles had gone completely rigid. How? How do they coordinate anything? That's the truly baffling part. Pix Lara brought up another simulation. They've developed something called, let's definitely grab coffee sometime, which appears to be a temporal paradox in verbal form. Both parties agree to a future meeting while simultaneously understanding that it will never occur. But that's a violation of basic causality. Indeed. Our linguists are still trying to understand how we should totally hang out can be both a genuine expression of intent and a complete negation of that same intent simultaneously. The main screen now showed a series of human communication exchanges. Let's meet up soon. Yes, absolutely. Neither party makes any attempt to schedule anything. We should get dinner sometime for sure. 3 years pass. VC Torion's translator made a sound that could only be described as a temporal hiccup. This defies all known laws of social physics. Oh, it gets worse. Pix Lara's bioluminescence dimmed sympathetically. They have these things called New Year's resolutions where they make elaborate plans for temporal optimization, with the full understanding that they'll abandon them within weeks. But why? Our researchers believe it's some sort of ritual self-deception. They set their chronometers forward to exercise earlier, then ignore them. They create elaborate scheduling systems, then immediately deviate from them. They install productivity monitoring software, then spend hours finding ways to circumvent it. VC Torian drifted to his temporal analysis console, his tentacles moving frantically over the controls. There must be a pattern. Some underlying logic we're missing. Bring up the data on their entertainment consumption habits. Are you sure, sir? That data is particularly chaotic. Do it. The screen filled with streaming patterns that made VC Torian's chromatophores pulse in distress. Humans were somehow watching multiple episodes of different entertainment series simultaneously, a phenomenon they called multi-screening. They were starting new series without finishing others, watching episodes out of order, because spoilers don't matter, and worst of all, they're skipping the temporal progression indicators at the beginning of episodes. VC Torian's voice had gone up several octaves. Yes, sir. Something they call skipping the intro, and don't even get me started on their binge-watching behavior. No, I don't want to know. What about their temporal measurement devices? Surely they must maintain some standards there. Lara reluctantly brought up footage from various human environments. Well, sir, we've observed that they keep multiple chronometers in the same space, all showing slightly different times. They'll look at their communication devices for the time even when wearing chronometers on their arms. And most disturbingly, they set their temporal devices deliberately incorrect. Deliberately incorrect. Yes, sir. They call it setting the clock fast to avoid being late. However, they then perform complex mental calculations to determine the actual time, rendering the entire exercise pointless. Grand chronologist VC Torian was now experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis, though of course, he would never admit to such a temporally imprecise state of being. Show me, he said quietly, the impact on our broader temporal control network. Lara's bioluminescence flickered nervously before she brought up a galaxy-wide temporal map. The display showed a perfect web of synchronized timelines, except for one spiral arm where a chaotic burst of temporal discord was spreading like a chronovirus. As you can see, sir, human temporal anomalies are contagious. The map zoomed in on a trade route between Earth and the Regellian Empire. The formerly punctual Regellians were showing disturbing signs of what they called Earth lag, deliberately arriving late to appointments because they were on human standard time. The Arcturians have started using something called ish-pix, Lara reported grimly. As in, we'll arrive at 3-ish. Our temporal translators can't even process the concept. VC Torian's tentacles twisted into what humans might recognize as the alien equivalent of pulling one's hair out. But we are the Chronos Consortium. We brought temporal order to the chaos of the cosmos. We synchronized the rotation of binary star systems. We regulated the pulse of quantum fluctuations. We even got the Procyon Collective to stick to a meeting schedule. Yes, sir, but humans. Lara paused, searching for the right words. Humans seem to have evolved beyond our understanding of temporal physics. Watch this. The main screen showed a human university dormitory at 3 a.m. local time. A student was starting a thesis paper due in 6 hours, fueled by something called a Red Bull, and what the observers could only describe as sheer audacity. By all known laws of temporal mechanics, Lara explained, this task should be impossible. The paper requires at least 72 hours of research, analysis, and writing, and yet, they watched in horror as the student somehow compressed 3 days of work into a single night, literally warping the local space-time continuum through what their scientists termed deadline-induced temporal acceleration. But the writing quality must be terrible, VC Torian protested. That's the truly inexplicable part, sir. The student received what their system calls an A- and a note saying thought-provoking analysis. VC Torian's chromatophores had gone completely white, a sign of total cognitive surrender. This defies everything we know about causality. Sir Lara's tone had grown even more serious. There's something else. Something our field agents discovered about human temporal perception that, well, you need to see this. The display shifted to show a human workplace. A human was staring at a temporal measurement device, apparently experiencing what they called time dilation. Watch what happens to the local temporal field, Lara instructed. As the human continued to watch the clock, the surrounding space-time began to warp. Minutes stretched into apparent hours while actual hours compressed into minutes elsewhere. They call this the last hour of work on a Friday. Pix Lara explained. Somehow, humans can simultaneously experience time as moving too slowly and too quickly. They've weaponized boredom itself. But that's VC Torian's translator glitched, unable to find words for such temporal heresy. And it gets worse, Pix Lara continued. They've developed temporal anomalies they call weekends, where time apparently moves at triple speed. 2 Earth days pass in what feels like minutes to them. And then they've created something called Monday mornings, where time virtually stands still. The main screen showed more disturbing footage, humans claiming they were too tired to obey the laws of physics, entire populations experiencing mass temporal distortions during something called daylight saving time transitions. And worst of all, the spread of a temporal virus they called island time. The Centaurian High Command reported that their entire Third Fleet arrived late to a planetary defense exercise because they were operating on island time, Pix Lara reported. When questioned, the fleet admiral simply said no worries and made a hand gesture called a shaka. VC Torian's tentacles had gone completely limp. We're losing control of the entire temporal synchronization network, aren't we? I'm afraid it's worse than that. Sir Pix Lara brought up one final dataset. We've detected traces of human temporal chaos in the void beings. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the irregular ticking of a nearby chronometer that had somehow been infected with human temporal irregularity. The void beings, VC Torian whispered. The ancient entities that exist outside of time itself. Yes, sir. They've started showing up late to temporal apocalypses. One of them actually sent a message saying traffic was terrible in the quantum realm, my bad. VC Torian, Grand Chronologist of the Chronos Consortium, Master of Temporal Synchronization, Keeper of the Universal Clock, and now, witness to the complete unraveling of cosmic order, had finally reached a conclusion that was simultaneously horrifying and fascinating. Pix Lara, he said, his voice modulator unusually calm. I believe we've been looking at this all wrong. Pix Lara's bioluminescent patches pulsed questioningly. Sir. Bring up the long-term temporal stability analysis of Earth. The main screen flickered to life, showing a chaotic mess of temporal patterns that should have torn the planet's space-time continuum apart thousands of times over. And yet, they're stable, VC Torian mused, his tentacles waving thoughtfully. More than stable, they're thriving. But sir, their temporal variance rates are off the charts. They've got people in the same household operating on completely different timescales. They've got something called Mediterranean dinner time happening at midnight. Yes, VC Torian interrupted, his chromatophores shifting to a deep shade of contemplation. But don't you see? They're chaos. It's actually a form of perfect balance. The screen now showed a series of human activities, a mother arriving fashionably late to a dinner party precisely when the food was actually ready. A student's procrastination perfectly matching the time needed for their subconscious to solve a complex problem. A missed train leading to an important chance encounter. Sir Pix Lara's color shifted to match VC Torian's contemplative hue. Are you suggesting? Our greatest mistake, VC Torian continued, was assuming that temporal order meant temporal control. The humans, they've achieved something far more impressive. They've developed a symbiotic relationship with chaos itself. The display showed more examples: a delayed flight preventing someone from being in a disaster area, a late-night food delivery arriving exactly when someone realized they were hungry, a spontaneous decision to grab one more drink leading to a business opportunity that changed an industry. Look at this, VC Torian commanded, bringing up the data from their failed temporal standardization attempts. Every time we tried to impose order, the chaos simply shifted to maintain balance. It's beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. Like their traffic, Pix Lara realized, no matter how much they try to regulate it, it finds a way to make everyone late by exactly the right amount of time. VC Torian finished, his tentacles gesturing excitedly. And their snooze buttons, they're not tools of temporal disruption, they're individualized temporal calibration devices. The main screen now showed a complex temporal mathematics equation that made Pix Lara's bioluminescence flicker in surprise. Sir, are you saying the humans haven't been resisting our temporal control? VC Torian announced. They've transcended it. Their chronic lateness, their procrastination, their bizarre time management rituals, they're all part of a vastly more complex temporal ecosystem than anything we've achieved with our rigid synchronization. Just then, as if to prove his point, an alert flashed on the main screen. The void beings, those ancient entities that existed outside of time itself, were requesting an emergency conference with the consortium. The message read, "Sorry for the short notice, loving that human phrase, BDTU, but we need to talk about this whole controlling time thing. The humans might be onto something. Also, bringing snacks. Maybe. If we don't get distracted by quantum fluctuations. No promises. _TSU_." VC Torion stared at the message, particularly at the emoticon. The void beings had apparently learned from human communication patterns. Did an immortal cosmic entity just use a shrug emoji? "I believe they did," Sir Pix Lara confirmed. "They've also started ending messages with LOL and IMHO. VC Torion's tentacles moved in what might have been a shrug of his own. "Schedule the meeting for, oh, whenever they show up, I suppose." Sir Pix Lara's bioluminescence flashed in shock. "Are you suggesting we operate on human time?" Why not? VC Torion's chromatophores shifted to a previously unseen pattern of amused acceptance. After all, time is relative, as the humans say. Perhaps it's we who have been wrong, trying to force the cosmos into our rigid schedules. He drifted to his viewing portal one last time, watching as the chaotic but somehow perfect temporal patterns of Earth continued to spread across the galaxy. "You know, Pix Lara, I think I might try this running late concept myself. It seems liberating." Sir Pix Lara's color had shifted to match his. The Council of Temporal Standardization meets in exactly 3.7 minutes. VC Torion's tentacles waved dismissively. "Tell them I'll be there. Ish." And somewhere on Earth, a college student starting a paper 6 hours before it was due felt an inexplicable cosmic kinship with a tentacled alien bureaucrat who had finally learned to embrace the chaos. In the end, it turned out that humanity's greatest temporal weapon wasn't their ability to control time, but their talent for surfing its waves, riding its currents, and occasionally wiping out spectacularly before getting right back up and trying again. The Chronos Consortium eventually renamed itself the Temporal Flow Appreciation Society, and their new motto, suggested by the void beings themselves, simply read, "Time is what you make of it." Or whatever, no rush. The end.